Welcome. I am Joe Peters, and welcome to MomFit with Joe Peters and the Spanglish World Network and the Her Network on the single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the single TV app in the respective app stores and iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Single TV is also available in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Roku Stick in all the smart TVs since 2016. And if you are in your phone and social media, make sure that you are following me at Joe Unicorn Coach on Instagram, on Facebook. I handle my own social media, and I would love to hear from you if you have any questions, any challenges, any problems, any doubts, because our mission in this show is to help you to win the marathon of motherhood without burnout. And if I don't know the answer, I will find a beautiful and expert guest like Jamie that will come to the show and help us together. I am super, super excited to have um, Jamie with us. We're going to be talking about a lot of tools because, as Jamie is going to explain, parenting doesn't have to be exhausting. Even when sometimes we feel like we are exhausted, we just need to do some good tools on it. So, Jamie uh, has warm experience in professional counseling, and she gained wisdom from parenting seven wonderful children. Bless your heart, because I barely start with one. Jamie works as a dedicated parent coach, speaker, and author, and she offers valuable insight and practical guidance to empower those with unique journeys of parenting, understanding that every parenting journey is unique and every child is unique. Jamie is the founder of Parenting with Personality and the creator of the Calm Connection Parenting Coaching Program. She equips parents with tools and strategies they need to foster meaningful connections. She understands the struggles that can be dealing with children and that who might be highly sensitive, highly emotional, intense, or exhibiting challenging behaviors. As a regularly featured guest on channel Mom Radio, her relatable stories and humorous anecdotes bring laughter and inspiration to moms, dads, listeners, making parenting enjoyable and fulfillment adventure like it should be. So I am super excited to have Jamie here. Jamie, welcome to the show. I would love for you, first to all, tell us a little bit about your story, how you found that this is your passion, that this is your mission, that you were meant to help parents to enjoy parenting and find that it doesn't have to be exhausting all the time.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to share a little bit of that story. From the time I was just a little girl, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a mother. And I can remember when they wanted me to find a career and they said, you're graduating top of your class, you have all of these scholarships, you have to find a career. And I just wanted to be a mom. I just wanted to be a mom. But I went ahead and I went to college. I got a degree in counseling because I knew I could help people. And I knew whatever I learned in counseling, you can use in relationships all across life. And so thankfully, God has given me the chance to be a mom, and 7 times over. And what a blessing that has been. But sometimes parenting can be a challenge too. And as big of a blessing as it can be, it can have its hardships. And we've had some of those hardships, especially as we've helped some of our kiddos work through some mental health issues. And it can really be exhausting on a parent. It can be trying on a family, and it can really wear on relationships. And so as I worked as a professional counselor, I knew I enjoyed helping people, but I knew that I wanted to help them even more closely on the daily routines, what it looks like every day, not just the high points in a 50-minute session. And so I think that was what really drove my passion to really design this program, that I could help parents learn about their child's personality, or figure out sensory processing difficulties, or help them figure out, is there something developmentally that is going on that I just need to understand better? But my heart is really to help parents connect with their kids and form these relationships that are meaningful and can last a lifetime. And sometimes we just need tools to know how to work with their unique wiring.
And I love that. And I have some comebacks from that. But before, because then I will forget, I want every time that I invite a guest to my show, I ask them for their favorite phrase. And I want you to talk a little bit about why you choose the one that you choose. Jamie's phrase is just one step at a time. What is your next best step? So, what is all about that phrase that inspired you and is one of your favorite phrases to approach?
It's probably one of my favorites because I have to use it myself. I like to say something that you repeat in your head. We often refer to as a mantra. As a mom, I call them momtras. And it's so important to have these momtras that kind of speed you on, kind of get you going when you're maybe getting stuck. And so I use this one a lot. I feel like it's so important because we can be bombarded with all of these things that we need to do, or we need to accomplish, or we need to learn, or maybe we even start feeling guilt over what we haven't done right or what we should be doing. And instead of feeling bombarded or overwhelmed and shutting down or withdrawing, it's so important that we just look at one step at a time. And if you can just focus on that next best step, things feel so much more doable. And so I use it in my own life. And I think it's just a simple thing that I like to encourage parents. And even in families, if you're trying to help an overwhelmed child, let's just break this down. What's just the next step we need to do? And how can I help you there? So I just think it brings in the focus a little bit instead of feeling so overwhelmed.
And I love that. And let's gonna just dive in because there is so many things that I want to talk with you about it. The first one is I was kind of laughing when you were talking about the sensory issues because that is something that nobody taught our parents, right? Nobody taught our
No.
grandparents. And I remember as a little girl, I was never diagnosed, but I remember crying when they put new clothes on me, the feeling of new clothes. And then for my dad, it becomes a big deal in my house because my dad was like, "Oh, you are just being a little brat, and it's new clothes that we bought for you. You have to wear it." And I will just cry because it literally hurt my skin. It was a
Right.
sensory issue. So my mom started just washing the clothes, hiding behind his back because he would be like, "Oh, you are just spoiling her. She needs to learn." But she believed me. But the point with that is, as more we are preparing to understanding that, as more we are going to be able to. One of the other guests on this show had a show for kids that is all about making sure that we raise our kids in a way that they don't need therapy when they are adults.
Right.
And I think that that is what you are working on. So let's gonna start with a topic that is wonderful, and I think that is going to be key. Tool number one: empathy, and why empathy is key for leading our relationship with our children and our family, and how empathy can actually become a game changer in our life.
Absolutely. Empathy is so oftentimes not talked about. I never realized what a game changer it really is in parenting. And this is one of the reasons I like to explain when I work with parents. Oftentimes, our kiddos' behaviors escalate because they really want us to understand. So their emotions get bigger, their behaviors become more blatant, or maybe the struggles that we're seeing become more and more common. And all of a sudden, we're like, what's going on here? And if we lead with empathy, we start to show our child that we understand what's going on and we care about what's going on. So it might be as simple as saying, hey, I understand that you feel scared. And the minute we say something that simple to them, they can become more receptive, less defensive, and feel like we get them. So they don't have to work so hard to recruit us to understanding. That's already done. And so we can jump in with, you know what? It feels yucky when people are getting to do things that we don't get to do. Or, you know what? I understand that it feels unfair, but I still need you to do your chores today. And we can talk later about how I can do something to help you. You know, it comes in those simple ways that we express to them, I understand you. And when we show our child that we understand them, we see them, we hear them, that is one of the best ways that we can show them that we love them.
And I love that. And for because I want to talk to you about this and what tools we can have, because when we are talking about empathy, I want us to be clear into what we are talking of, what empathy is. And in the dictionary, Oxford language says empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. And I make emphasis on the ability because em- em- being empathic and in empathy is being sometimes wrong label into is something that you have or you don't. And
Right.
the reality is, as any ability is something that you can develop. So on
That's
that
right.
part, how we as parents, how the moms that are pregnant, the moms that had kids, especially the moms that are having multiple kids close to each
Yeah.
other like yours, how they can work on developing that ability, and what that empathy, what are some of the tools to keep that empathy as part of their daily life.
Right. Oh, that is such an important question. And I love that. You know, there's two things that come to mind. First of all, I think it's important that we learn to just take what I like to refer to as a powerful pause. And it sounds so simple that maybe you could just skip it, but you really can't, because that powerful pause allows you to stop responding and just think for a minute. Just think for a minute about what's really going on. And then I encourage people to just really listen, just hear what's happening with your child. And if we really listen, sometimes what they feel is the problem isn't what we really thought was the problem. And so, if we're really taking in what is it that they're feeling, and we're trying to kind of predict in our head, what is the feeling behind this? Is it anger? Is it that they're scared? Is it that they're worried or stressed? Maybe they're uncertain. So many of those are words that our kids don't have a vocabulary for. So they can't tell us, I'm feeling worried, or I'm feeling stressed, or I'm uncertain about what's going to happen today. But if we can say to them, you know what? I bet you're feeling a little nervous that you don't know what's going to happen when we go to the doctor. Or I bet it feels a little weird to be going somewhere that you don't know what we're going to be doing. Those are simple ways that we essentially try to put ourselves in our child's shoes and understand, how are they seeing the situation. I oftentimes encourage parents, when you're having trouble being empathetic, to put yourself in a similar situation with a boss. If you walked into work one day and you were feeling really uncertain because you had no idea how to execute what he had asked you to do, what would you be feeling? And how would you want him to talk to you? And how would you need him to take time to listen to you? And how would you know if he understood? And oftentimes, when we shift it from parent to child and we think more in terms of, if this was a spouse, if this was a friend, if this was a boss, what would I need? That's what we need to offer. And I think that, as you talked about, is how we develop that empathy. And I don't think we get to let ourselves off the hook like, oh, I'm just not an empathetic person. It's just not in my personality. These are skills that are so important for us to learn. And we learn them in other areas of life, like with a boss or in a relationship. And it's equally important that we exercise them with our children.
And there, what I was thinking on that of the empathy that will be that normally we don't pause and we don't reflect is helping our children to know that we were children too. So when you were saying, I can imagine that you are scared. Maybe go even a step forward and remember when I was a child, I was scared of. Oh, you know what? When mommy was a little girl, she was really not comfortable with this or that. So then, because I think that part of that empathy is that having those feelings, and that could be challenging for a kid because they tend to compare themselves with us without knowing that we have 20, 30, 40, 50 years more than experience and working our emotions. So they can think, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say to it's okay to be scared, but you never are scared. I never see you scared. And I think that that is part of, I would love to hear your feedback on this, on why it's important to share out loud when we are struggling with emotions even as an adult, so then when we go and help them, they really believe that we are walking the talk. Because
Mhm.
like it's typically the, I don't know, I think I was feeling it, I was talking about this with my other business, but it's almost like when you are hearing PMS advice from a male,
Right.
and then you are like, well, that's all theory, you never had PMS, so
You have no idea.
no, yeah. But then I was thinking when you
Mhm.
were talking that that is what our kids can feel. Like if our kids always see us being brave to go to the doctor or calm down or not fear, and we told them things like that, they could be thinking the same. Like, okay, it's very easy for you to say it because you always have your shit together. So how much compassion and love can be for us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable in front of our kids, so then they can say, oh, so you were scared before and now you are not? Oh, I can do the same.
Right. Oh, you said so many good things there. And I think that is so important. And that is how we grow in empathy. We start hearing what it is that they feel and we think, how can I identify? How can I help them understand that I identify? And stories can be so powerful with our children. You know what? I remember what it felt like to be jealous. Do you want to hear a story about when I was jealous? I had this friend in high school and this is what happened and then this is what how I handled it and this is how it felt. I remember sharing such a story with my kids driving along in the car one day, and then every time we passed that landmark, they would bring up the story about, remember mom when you used to be jealous? As painful it was to be consistently reminded of something I wasn't really proud of, it formed a connection that you haven't always been what we know you to be, and you can identify with us. You know what that feels like. And you know what, we grew in that way too. You mentioned the whole sensory thing, and we really had to learn empathy when it came to understanding sensory difficulties with one of our kids. Especially when you have 7 kids, you try really hard not to compare them, but when you have 6 that handle mealtime with no issues, and all of a sudden you have one that continually struggles with every meal, it can be hard to find empathy for that because you've seen 6 other times that meal times weren't an issue. But we had to realize that his sensory processing was like off the charts. He struggled with tastes and textures and smells and sounds and, fears over the food. And until we learned about sensory processing, which you're right, we don't hear about that as moms until it's impacting our lives. Until I learned about it, I couldn't empathize with what he was feeling. And as I educated myself, I was able to realize how his unique wiring was taking in messages at every meal. I could understand why he was struggling with it. I could understand how to express to him that I understood. But then together, we were better able to collaborate and problem solve. So, if this is the struggle, what can we do about it? And so, sharing those stories of things we've struggled with, things we've overcome, can empower them if we're willing to be real and, like you said, vulnerable.
And I think that that part is so empowering. When you were talking about the food sensitive and the texture, when I was talking about my clothes, I remember this time where I was already an adult and we were walking out of a restaurant. I was working for Goodyear. And one of my coworkers looked up and there was this beautiful tree with purple flowers. And he looked and smiled and tell me, "Can you describe me how that looks like?" No,
Mhm.
like, and he was like, "I'm color blind, so I know that is black and for me, I see it as black and white, but because of the black and white contrast." He was an American, and we were in Colombia. Because of the black and white contrast, that is not something that I see very often in the flowers in the US. I know that these are special, different. And that hit me so hard because for me it was just only a beautiful flower in the tree, but then being able to, so then I start thinking, okay, how I can share with him so he, even when he don't see it, can still understand the beauty of it. That I think that is what you are saying is
Oh, that is a beautiful example. Yes, exactly.
understanding how we can get them to. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I think, and I would love for you to tell me about this with your clients, and for the parents to remember this. And is a lot of the time we forget that we are the adult and they are the child. And then we either get back into childhood behaviors with them, or we expect them to behave as an adult. And then I keep saying, like, well, you are the adult. It is
Right.
your job to be regulated. It is your job to
Right.
support them. It is your, like, that is why you are their parent. That is why they are, that is why they are not your parent. That is why you are the parent. That happened a lot of time when we were talking about not having trauma later on. To in our generation, there is a lot of kids that were parentifying, where those roles came down. So how we can keep that, because the reality is there are days that are tiring, there are days that we are sick, there are days that the kids are sick.
Mhm.
How we can keep remember that we are the parent, and because of that we need to walk the talk and lead by example.
Yeah.
And then um, being gentle and graceful, that we're not going to do it perfect, but also keep that reminder that it's part of our job to do this important work that we are talking about.
Right. Oh, that is so true. And I like to use this simple phrase: we as parents set the tone. We set the tone, and we can't expect our child to calm when we aren't calm. How many times are we worked up and we're feeling the stress and we're like, you have got to stop crying, or you have got to stop shouting. A child cannot regulate if we are not co-regulated with them. And so setting that tone, whether it's in intensity or tone of voice or level of respect, even your ability to be flexible, even that you help set the tone with. You help show your child this is how it's done. And like you said, we have to give ourselves grace because we're going to mess up. And I like to remind parents that I work with, you can even use your mistakes. You can. So when you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Don't guilt and shame yourself. Go back to the situation and then teach them how we make things right when we do wrong, because that is equally important. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You're human. But the way you repair that mistake, that is gold.
Absolutely. Okay, now, because I'm afraid that we're not going to have enough time to talk about everything that we need
I
to talk
know.
to. Let's go talk a little bit about, and this is really challenging for me as a perfectionist in recovery, how important is flexibility
Oh,
with
man, it
our
is one of
parenting and with ourselves as parents to actually support them into their journey.
yes. It is one of those extremely important keys. If we had a tool belt, I would put empathy and flexibility right here in the front. And the reason is because it can be hard with all of the messages we get about parenting and being consistent, that we oftentimes think, I always have to do the same thing. That's what consistency is. I like to reframe consistency is that you teach your child that you're going to do what's best in each situation. And generally, that will look much the same. If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this is what I respond with. And that is general consistency. But equally important is that we shape their idea of what to expect from us, that they can trust that we will do best. Not necessarily the same for everybody, not the same in every situation. But sometimes as parents, we need to feel the permission to be flexible and also the boundaries of being flexible. We don't have to worry that when we're flexible that we're letting them walk all over us, so that we're being permissive or that we're giving in or that we're letting them wear the pants. And we get so many messages in parenting that if we give it all, that that's the kind of parent we are. And I just really encourage parents, understand more than anything your child, their personality, their unique wiring. If they have special issues, sensory processing, whatever else it might be, understand them and have the flexibility that you can kind of appreciate and understand their body budget. What do they have to work with today? And sometimes when their body budget is low, you have to be more flexible. On days where they have more in their body budget to work with, you can stick more to the line of when this happens, this is how we respond. But flexibility is so key, not only so you can keep your connection, but because you want them to learn to be flexible. And when we model flexibility, they learn from us. We're one of their best teachers.
And I love how you reframe consistency. Consistency is not doing it always the same way, but doing the best possible way on that moment. And that moment can be different. And that is one thing that came to mind is how different we can parent when they are sick or when they are not sick. So if the consistency is something, but then they are sick, then maybe that thing that we consistently do is not the best thing to do while they are sick, and that is okay. And I love that. Let's go talk a little bit about things that are tricky for us as parents, like chores, deadlines, electronic time, screen
Mhm.
time, and how we can have that balance between um, boundaries and limits and still flexibility for them
Right.
to have the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. And you know what? Chores and electronics are two of the issues that stress so many homes. And I think flexibility is key with both of those things. And again, when we learn to show empathy, we understand what our child has to work with that day. Our sensory child yesterday was at a track meet outside all day. He hates being outside. He hates the wind. He hates the cold. He hates running. I honestly don't know why he went out for track because it seems like a real mismatch, but he wanted to do it. And I knew that because of his sensory wiring, the day was going to be exhausting to him. Okay, on a normal day when he gets home and there's a very short evening, we don't get out electronics. But I knew that his system had been stressed all day and that it took a lot for him to really push through. So I messaged him in the day and said, you know what? You're working really hard today. I'm wondering if a little bit of electronic time tonight might help the day feel easier. Those are ways where we exercise flexibility that say to our child, I see you, I hear you. More than anything, I understand you, and I'm willing to work with you. When it comes to chores, there may be days where chores happen seamlessly, and you don't have to say a word, they may just get done. Count those days a blessing. Other days, it doesn't work like that. And you're like, I feel like I keep giving reminders. We start a chore, but we don't finish a chore. We complain about a chore, whatever it might be. I encourage you to have the flexibility to come together with your child and collaboratively decide, okay, this is the thing. You're part of our family. We all live in this home. There's going to be things that need to be done. What kind of things would you like to be in charge of? Sometimes the things they throw out, they'll have better buy-in, and they're things that really need to be done anyway. If there's a task that you really need to give them, talking through why does this task feel hard? What might make it feel easier? They may need some supports, like you doing it alongside them for a couple days, and then them learning and easing into doing it on their own. But the flexibility that you can say, this child may do it seamlessly with no problem. This child may need different supports along the way. You can be a consistent parent and have those two look different.
Oh, I love that, because that is something that is, especially with the older generation, so big into they need to be treated the same and they needs to be the same for all of them. And I love how you are giving the parents the the freedom, the open check to say no. If you're
Yeah.
My grandmother used to say that children were like your fingers. There was not one that was the same that the other. When we use that and say, hey, with all of these things, I'm gonna be flexible to work into what is best for each of them depending on their needs. It's powerful. The other thing that I was thinking that I see with my son that I try is be willing to drop our own agenda of what we want and what we want to see and do with things like course, because it's a lot into what being curious about what is interesting for them. So for example, My child is all about cleaning, like sweeping and cleaning, and the dishes and cooking. He's not as much into picking up his toys after. He's not much into his bed. He's not much into some of these other things. So instead of me having my own agenda of I want him to fix his bed every morning because that is going to be a skill, blah blah blah, on the story that we have. Like, okay, I'm gonna foster the things that by default he enjoys and feel interesting. So his chores are helping with the dishwasher, are helping with the cooking, are when there are spills, cleaning. And then for the picking up the toys and the other ones, then we do it together. But I am a lot more doing it with him than expecting him to do it by himself. Like it's almost like that push pull.
Right.
So when he's doing the things that he enjoy, I'm just pulling. Like he just doing it. I'm just there to supervise. When he's doing some of these other activities that are not the one like you were saying that he enjoys, then I'm there pushing along the way with him and doing it with him.
Right. That's a great example. And again, this is one of those situations where you can kind of relate it to if this was me and my boss, how would that feel? If you walked into a job, you were excited about this job you got, you walk in first day and your boss says, "Okay, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be answering phones for 6 of 8 hours in the day. The other 2 hours of the day, I need you to be writing some emails and cleaning the bathroom." And you're like, "Oh, man, I don't mind cleaning the bathroom, but man, I really dislike talking on the phone. It stresses me out, it makes me anxious, whatever it might be." And you were like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And there was no wiggle room on that. And you were just like, how am I going to do this? It would stress you out. But if your boss was like, "Okay, what kind of things are your talents? What are you good at? Where do you excel?" and and you would still get the job done, or somehow you would figure out ways to communicate. You may need a little communication over the task. You may still have to execute that task, but you might come up with some creative ways to get phone calls made. Maybe you'd find ways that you could spend less than 6 hours doing them. Perhaps it's not even that important that you be the one to make those phone calls. Maybe there's a team member where you swap tasks with. I think what's so important is that we keep in mind, is this a heart issue? And when we focus on heart issues, we don't have to worry so much about the behavior. And what I mean with that is this: we want our children to learn to be responsible. Is it important that they learn how to scrub a sink every day? Or is it that we want them to do some task every day so that they learn to be responsible with a daily task? And I think, again, that's where our flexibility comes in as a parent, and we can be better flexible when we're focusing on the real heart of the issue and not the other details that can be part of our agenda. Maybe we feel like a good parent if our kid makes their bed every day. But you know what? If you have a kiddo that wakes up and can barely get dressed and ready for school on time, guess what? One thing I took off my table: the bed getting made in the morning. You know why? Because no one sees that bed all day long. And you know what? Later in life, we can talk about why we make a bed or how it might look better. And truly, when he leaves home, he's going to decide if he makes his bed or not. But I will have helped him learn how to streamline his mornings so that mornings can be pleasant, so that relationships don't have to be negative when you're stressed beyond your means. And I've understood that his body budget in the morning is small. And I've learned to work within his unique wiring for what he's capable of.
And I love that because that is reinforcing very clear the message of as a parent we need to check out into my own agenda and my expectation versus the unconditional love that we all feel with our children, into meet them where they are. And that makes me think of, I don't know, I use this a lot, but that cartoon where you have a teacher and then you have a fish and a monkey and a lion and a bird, and it says they all will fail if you test them and judge them based on their ability to fly, because based on
Yes.
their ability to fly only the bird is going to fly.
Mhm.
And then I think is understanding that is not that we are not being helping them and that we are being permissive. Is understanding that as more we understand where they are great at and we leverage that, instead of keep working. One of the things that I have a big problem with the schools is that kid comes with grades and had 4 A's and 1 C. Parents, instead of reinforcing the 4 A's and getting them into camps on those 4 A's, because that is what they naturally are good at, what they love, what we normally do.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to figure out that C.
See,
We need to improve that C. We need to have a tutor. You need to have more classes of that. So we are actually reinforcing and doing the things that they don't like, and getting to that perfectionist in mind. So I love your approach into the first step is understanding where your child shine. And
mhm,
for some can be, my child is not a morning person, so I'm not going to
right.
expect a lot. If he eat breakfast and go to school, is a win.
That's
Um,
right.
and then for others, it's in the evening. So it's understanding that, and then from that, going back, being flexible into adjusting our agenda and our expectation
Right.
for the highest good of the overall outcome.
And that's why I think understanding our child's personality is so key. And when I first started years ago, I just did speaking and my book and educating on personalities. And that in itself is a powerful tool for parents because we learn what our child's strengths are. We can learn what their potential struggles might be. We learn their emotional needs. And it gives us this framework of how they might function best and areas they may need to grow in, but it gives us some better expectations of what we can expect from them or how they might respond or how we can communicate with them. So personality is a great tool for that.
And I think that, and I want to hear your feedback here into how we can work into separating our personality from theirs. Because sometimes I think that it's very easy for us to compare us and how we behave with them. And then understanding that, yeah, even when in my personality and my life, I didn't have these things or I was not that sensitive, that doesn't mean that that is a completely valid option for my child.
Mhm.
So how we can keep
Absolutely.
that check in mind of
Mhm.
respecting their personality and don't get in the trap of comparing them with us.
Oh, that's a great question. And you know what? I have learned so much from having 7 kids, but if anything, it's that very thing. I have some kiddos whose personalities are similar mine. And in ways we get each other and it works. And in ways we aren't so good together because we're kind of like we struggle with the same things. Then I have other kids that I'm like totally opposite with, and there's things that I don't get at all. But then other ways we work together because we bring different things to the table. So there isn't a right and there isn't a wrong. But I remember clearly when our little boy was about 3.5 years old, he climbed up one of our antennas near our house and was on top of the roof of our house. And I felt like freaking out. It scared me to death, and I was afraid he was gonna fall. And I remember standing at the edge of the roof, looking up at him, and I so badly wanted to say, "Get down from there before you fall." But I knew that could cause him to fall, right? So I had to think, how is he going to hear this best? And that really comes down to his personality. So I stood there and I said, "Hey, I have something really important to tell you." And he stops moving. And I said, "I need you to be really still so you can hear me. Okay? And now slowly come closer. I'm not sure I can say it loud enough." And then I started telling him some important things. "How about, can you just come down so I can tell you?" And he came down carefully from the house. And once his feet were on the ground, I said, "Being on top of the house is so scary. Like you could get hurt. We can't do that again." But I knew that didn't really make any impression on him because that would have only been what my personality would respond to. So I said, "Why don't you head to your room, think of some ways that we can do this different." And so he went to his room. I gathered my wits so I wasn't, one of those moms that was kind of just going off and scared and nervous. And I go in later and I said, "You know what? We can't ever climb on the house again. But I know that you like really big challenges, right? Like why were you trying to climb the house? I need something big to climb." I said, okay, well, then how about you climb up on top of your bunk bed? Whenever you need to be up high, you get on top of your bunk bed. Nope, not good enough. I need something higher. I said, okay, well, how about the ladder in the garage? Nope, not high enough. I need something higher. I said, you know what? There is a super tall ladder in the other yard. Let's make a deal. The next time you feel like you need to climb something really high, come ask me and I will go get that ladder. Guess what happened? He never ever asked for the ladder and he never ever got on top of the house. Now, if I had just said to him, don't you ever get on top of the house again, that is horribly dangerous. Don't do it. What might he have attempted again? Get on the house, right? Because we hadn't really solved the problem.
And even worse, doing it hiding. There will
Right.
not be anybody there to help him if he was in trouble. I love
That's
that
right.
story. I love, love, love that story. Now, as we start getting into the end, I was going to touch on one that is very important, and I for sure know that we're not going to have enough time to talk about it, but laughter and humor, and
Oh,
how we can use laughter and humor as a way to redirect and reconnect, and how it's not true that when you are laughing and having fun then you are not being serious, and then your kids will not respect you because you are just laughing
yeah.
and having fun.
Oh, that's so important. It is so important. It's so key. You know, we were put in our child's life to help them, to support them, to model things for them, to nurture and help guide them. But you know, our child was created with a purpose, and we are one of the most important people in their life to help them accomplish what they were created for. And so it can be a serious job and it can be an intense job, and we can get so overwhelmed and focused that we start taking life so serious. And we think that everything they do is defiance or disrespect, or that they're not, that they don't care about us, or that something's wrong with them, or that now they make us look like bad parents, when the truth is they're still learning, they're still growing, they're going to make mistakes, we're going to make mistakes. And so sometimes we just need to lighten the load. We need to just take time to laugh. We need to remember to redirect first. And one of the first ways that we can redirect is just with a little bit of humor, like, whoa, hold it, did I just see your room as messy as I thought I saw it? Or hold it, that sounded a lot like fighting. Let's rewind that and try saying that in a nice way. In those ways, we are lighthearted and we can laugh about make mistakes. We can do it again the right way, and we keep connection.
I love that. And the other thing that I think that is important and remind us is our brain learn the best when it's having fun. And that is one of the reasons why there are so many studies that saying that. And actually, I was even thinking in showing that there is a research that is showing how much better problem solving and decision making the CEOs of some companies are having when, as part of their weekly um, work week, they
Mhm.
have 4 hours of do your hobby and go and have fun. The
Yeah.
company is going to literally pay you to have fun, and people are like, "What?" Like, and they're like, "Yeah," because they start understanding
Mhm.
that literally after they went for 4 hours to golf or to do pottery or to paint and have fun, they will come and their brain will be just wiring so many powerful ways.
It does, it rewires it, it gives them energy, it adds to their body budget, it gives them more to work with. When we use fun, when we interact, when we play, when we use appropriate humor, never making fun or putting them down, but honest fun and laughter, it creates that connection and it increases. It's like putting money into their body budget so that when they need to withdraw, it's there.
And I love that. And then, really quickly before we start wrapping up, one thing that is important, especially for generations, is being very clear that humor
Mhm.
or joking never make anybody feel bad.
Mhm. Or is
So
it anybody's expense? Yeah.
it's not at anybody's expense. So when we're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I was just joking," no, you were not
Mhm.
joking. And
Yeah.
then when we make fun of a child and we put them like sometimes as the reason for everyone in the family to laugh, and we're like, "Oh, but Jamie and Joe told me that humor was good." That is not humor. That is, I will
Mhm.
say, even I will say that child's abuse. That is abuse.
Yeah.
Humor is when your child is laughing with you, not when you are laughing at your
When
child.
you can laugh together, and if you're gonna laugh at any mistake, it should be your own, nobody else's, because you know what? Having people laugh at mistakes is just brutal. Nobody needs that. We are guilty and, we shame ourselves. We're full of guilt on our own. We don't need a parent that accentuates that. We need to really foster grace. And if we're gonna laugh at a mistake, it's our own. Otherwise, the humor is fun and everybody can interact and agree that this is what brings us closer. So humor and laughter that bring you closer.
And I love that way to finish it up, going back into what you always say, and that we as parents set the tone into, if we thinking that is how we can set up the tone for more laugh and more humor and more play with
Yeah.
our children, for them to have that fertile soil for everything else that we are planting to grow nice. Jamie, I love having you. I'm for sure going to have you back. You are
Great.
an ocean of wisdom. You have a beautiful energy. I love what you are doing. As we
Thank
close
you.
the show, can you, if you could have just one message to all the moms around the world that are watching the show today around motherhood and parenting their children, what would be that one message?
Oh man, just invest today in the relationship you want to have with your child for a life. For life. And when we do that, we pay attention to the things that really matter and not all of the other static.
I love that. Pay attention to the things that really matter. Pay attention to the things that are going to matter in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, not the noise. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Jamie, if people fall in love with you like I did, how they can find you, how they can connect with you, where they can find more about you and your work.
You bet. Parentingwithpersonality.com online, and then on Facebook and Instagram at Parenting with Personality as well. And I would love to connect with anybody. Feel free to send a message or connect through social DM, whatever might work for you. But thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And again, please go and find Parenting with Personality. I think that is amazing and a good reminder that we don't need to parent like anybody else. We need to parent with our own personality and with the personality of our kids. And then they both are unique. So, Parenting with Personality in social media, parenting with personality.com to learn more about Jamie. And when you are there, make sure that you are also follow me at Joe Unicorn Coach. We are here to support you. We are here to help you to win the marathon of motherhood without burnout. And like we start the show, we are going to finish it. Understanding that doesn't have to be exhausting, and understanding that if it's feeling exhausting, I will invite you to send a message to Jamie, send a message to me, and say, I don't know how this cannot be exhausting, but I need help. And we will find ways to help you to know what are the tools that you need to implement. Thank you so much for being here,
You
Jamie.
bet.
Have a
Thanks for having
wonderful.
me.
You're very welcome. I will for sure say you up for another one. And
Great.
congratulations on the 7 children.
Thank
You need
you.
to have fun about all the stories about what happened with them growing up. And for everybody else in the audience, thank you for tuning in, sending us a message. If you love the show today, I would love for you to give a comment and rate us and subscribe and like us. That is how we are able to move this message even bigger around the world. And remind you that this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. A Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you.